Christian Dimmer is German. I'm Canadian, and you'll probably notice right away because I'm far too happy. Sorry, perhaps it's the wrong crowd to say that. So today I want to talk about a few things, and I want to talk about the Still City as well. So Kuhn and I were talking about how to do this presentation, and we kind of had something done, and then we thought, well, no, that's not right. We have to talk about this and this and this. And it turns out that basically we've got way too many things that are kind of impacting on our life. And we want to kind of throw them all in. So because this is a workshop, I decided to throw them all in, and so it's a little bit messy, but hopefully there's some interesting ideas, and hopefully you can give us some critiques as well. So mostly I'm here for you to tell me what you think, I suppose, rather than to give you, I'm not here to sort of impart wisdom. So yeah, okay. Disaster. This is sort of the vision. So it's late, so I figured we should go with a little bit of levity, just to lighten things up a bit. Disaster is usually momentary, it's momentous, it's this massive thing that sticks in your mind. And after the disaster that hit, of course, Tokyo and Tohoku last year, but you can see in the news in New York City and around Manhattan and all the states around New York, disaster is something that's ongoing year-round, all around the world, and it's usually kind of like this. It's really big, and it's something you remember at least for a month or two, and then it kind of fades away, unfortunately. And we're kind of dealing with the aftermath of what happens after Godzilla wrecks it. But what I wanted to talk about was actually, it's kind of hard to see, I'm not sure, can you see this? I want to talk about this one, because at the base of the disaster is actually something much more insidious. And it's this little old lady. She's basically not unnoticed, but not really dealt with. And Christian's already talked about the aging society and all these problems. And this is kind of incremental disaster. And I'm really interested in how we deal with this sort of thing. So basically, we have this huge problem that has happened because of the tsunami and the earthquake, and then there's this sort of latent disaster that's been building and building and building for the last decades. And this is the one that's never being dealt with, and you don't get money for it, it doesn't get managed, and so now we have kind of a, well, I'll just sort of explain as I go along, I think. Just to put it in context, I think you already know this. I heard there was a really cool animation showing how population is aging and going up in this diagram, and this is absolutely what we're facing. Everybody's getting old, and we're getting old really, really fast, and I can feel it myself. I'm already heading towards one of these statistics in the upper bits there, and I can see I'm not going to have many young people help below me to help me out while I'm here. But more than that, there's this thing too, and this is the one that's really painful because not is everyone just getting old. The population is shrinking. So, and this is the population in the next 100 years. So basically, we're going to go back to 1800s. The population is going to be like the 19th century, supposedly. How far you can trust this, I don't know. But in the next 20 years or so, basically Tokyo, the population the size of Tokyo, it's just going to be gone. So if you can imagine Japan without Tokyo overnight, it won't be that fast. But that's a big number to suddenly have to deal with not being there. And that's sort of the root of all these things that Christian was talking about, at least. So this is sort of just there. And then we have the disaster, and we have sort of a need to deal with that. But at the same time, we have this. And basically, planning right now, we don't even get a zero-sum game. The sum is negative. So if you want to make one city prosperous, some other city's got to lose population because they're not coming from anywhere but somewhere else. So if you're getting it growing in a prosperous place, there's still a problem. So you're never really solving the whole picture. You're only going to solve it locally. And this is a really big problem that I think we need to sort of deal with. So unless suddenly Japan decides to allow integration, which doesn't seem so likely somehow. You never know. So the thing is, though, that now we have this disaster in Tohoku, which is an area of Japan that has a really big aging population. They were hit by the earthquake, and now we have this kind of opportunity. I hate to say that, but it is kind of. All of those incremental problems that were sort of ignored, incremental disaster can now sort of be dealt with. And so I'm just going to show you quickly a project that it's a little bit too soon to show it, but I will anyways, just because it's sort of sitting in my mind and it sort of relates to what we're doing. So I worked at Keio University and just starting this project. And basically what happened is the government gave us some money, which we applied for. They didn't just say, here, take money. We had to do some work. But then we found a community and we asked them if we could work with them. And basically we're working with the community in just from the southern part of Kesunuma. And these guys are trying to recover from the disaster. And they can see that there's no vision. They can see already in the future that they'll have a house, they'll get a community, and then all of those incremental disaster things, those will all come raging back and there'll be no future. So they can already see that. And so they asked us to come up with something else. Basically they said, do something crazy if you want, but we just want a vision that we can work with that will take us into the future just a little bit. So basically that's where we're starting. And mostly we've done this for about 3 or 4 months now. I spent most of the budget so far traveling the world to see how other places have been doing stuff. And I'm not going to show that because basically that is where all you guys come from. So there's not a lot to show you because, I mean, you know it already, but there's some conclusions I can make. And so we've done a few workshops and we've talked about what they want to do. And I'll just briefly show this map. This is a map of what they want. It goes from really small stuff like how cars are, or all kinds of infrastructure things they want. It goes kind of all over the place. And the problem is that they want a whole bunch of stuff. And basically the thing that they want is they want a community that's going to last for a really long time. And they want a community that will, well, basically will be so great that people will move there and stay there forever and have lots and lots of kids, and people from Tokyo will move there and stay there and have lots of kids, and it will sort of reverse the siphon. Everyone goes to Tokyo now, they're hoping this place will be that amazing. So that's what they're asking, and I should say, I'm with a bunch of climate scientists. I'm the only architect in the group, so basically the amazingness, they keep looking at me. So that's a huge pressure. So if you've ever been in a group of these sort of technicians, and they say, well, we need to do something to fix it, and then they look at you and you're, what? I don't know how to do that. and the problem is that all of these incremental changes are still there, and they're huge. So how do you take them on? And so basically, like I said, I got to travel the world, and I just have a few just initial thoughts. So I'll just share them anyways. The big one is just this. So how do you plan a place where, over time, probably as people age, unless population really is increasing, you're going to end up with this. How do you have community? All the stuff that Christian talked about before, as people get old and they sort of lose the ability to be communing, how do you keep it going? And so my plan from now on basically is to figure out, well, how can you make an urban new place, because this actually has to be new because everything's gone. How do you make someplace new that can shrink? So I'm planning for shrinkage from the beginning. I'm hoping that it will keep growing because they did ask for amazing, but maybe the problem is too big. So how can we do that? So basically that's as far as I've gotten. But it's made me think about this actually, and it's a bit grainy. I don't know if you guys know this, but this is Lovejoy, and he made these islands in the Amazon. He wondered how much of the forest could be cut away, how small could the forest be before it sort of disintegrated completely because too much of the edge was exposed. So he did like 100 square meter bits of trees, 1,000 square meters or whatever. And basically the conclusion was if you cut away, you're going to lose. There is no solution. So basically his sort of ultimate conclusion was you should stop cutting down trees in the Amazon. And I kind of wonder, how small can we actually be and allow stuff to disagree, sort of disintegrate on the edges. This is kind of like the still city, because you're talking about things after growth. This is a question about how to deal with these edges when they disintegrate. How small can it be and still survive? So I hope to figure that out, and I really don't have an answer, so I apologize for that. Maybe next year I'll be able to tell you more. These are just some ideas that I stole, from my travels. This is Vauban in Germany, this is Copenhagen, this is Vancouver. These are the ideas that I think are important. I think we have to have buildings that can come down. And so we can hope for permanence, but we should aim for a way to take down places and turn them into something else. We should have communal energy, as well as individual production of energy. And something I just want to do because I think it's good for the environment is net zero, which is the Living Building Challenge. So I'm going to try and do that. Brad Pitt went for LEED. All of the houses in New Orleans are all LEED Platinum. I think we can do better. So I'm going to propose that we make net zero housing. So that's one thing that's sort of going on, and it's sort of sticking in my mind that we should do something that's sort of excellent, but excellent even though it gets small. That's an ambition that I think the still city has to be. So the city is still here, it's getting smaller, but it's still really good. This is sort of a project that we're going to start doing now, and I just wanted to sort of, as an ending to that little piece, say that this experience is affecting our practice. So we have a project here in Omata, which is a town on the outside of Tokyo. Tokyo's down here somewhere, I think, unless I got it wrong. And basically, we're supposed to design a place on the edge of the city, but we decided probably it has to be a place that can be taken down in 20 years, because the people who are going to design it for, we're not sure if they're going to need it after that. So our own practice now is starting to change. We're not thinking about 300-year houses, because they don't make sense. So that's sort of the edge of the still city for us. So giving context to all of this, sorry, I should keep track of time. I'll kind of go fast. 311. When I said this, I was just speaking in Canada a little while ago, and I said 311 like everyone knows it. I guess they all said, what's 311? I had to explain. Of course, it's March 11th. 311 is a huge thing, and if you were here, I'm sure you remember it. It wasn't a good day. It wasn't a good day for the people in Tohoku, and it wasn't really great here either, especially after a few days. So there's more than 16,000 people died, 100 and some thousand buildings were destroyed, 1.2 million buildings were damaged or destroyed in total. That's a lot of stuff to have to suddenly replace. And this is sort of what I'm getting at when I say that there is a need to rebuild all this, so maybe when we do that, we can sort of take advantage of the opportunity to answer some of those sort of incremental problems. But more than that, this is, by the way, I think it's Staten Island, actually. It's not Japan. The imagery all around the world is getting eerily, really frighteningly familiar every day on the news, and it's not even like my disaster, it's a disaster over there. Disasters are repeating and increasing, and they're all over the place, and it's just, we need to figure out how to not have this happen anymore. But I think the point of this is that, stillness is kind of okay, but, sorry, I'm just going to riff on stillness through the whole thing. There's all these external forces that are imposing. I think the idea of still city sort of assumes that nothing's going to happen. And I think probably this workshop, 2 years ago, everyone would have totally got it, because Tokyo was kind of really quiet, especially with the depression, sort of the bad economy. But now it's kind of different, and it doesn't feel so still anymore. So I kind of think that we have to really think about what's actually happening. And personally, I think flexibility is a huge part of how we deal with it. So just sort of another comparison. I think it's the first time that you can actually compare New York with Tohoku. This massive disaster that's hitting in a hugely densely populated area. It looks almost exactly like disaster that hit in Tohoku. Great photo by Iwan Ban. I guess you've all seen this, right? He hired a helicopter and took a picture. Tokyo didn't have this, but we had something kind of similar. And this is, how do you say, it's voluntary. Tokyo didn't really lose power, but they shut down certain parts of the city. And in the center, everyone just kept their lights off. They shut off the air conditioners. They didn't use elevators. So I thought, for those of you who weren't here, I would just sort of explain a little bit about what it was like in Tokyo. So going from Tohoku to Tokyo, trains stopped. Tohoku was horrible. Tokyo is nothing to compare. It was really easy here. I slept on a cot for one night. It's no big deal. But it was still kind of big, and it's big because of this. You think how big Tokyo is, like 30-some million people for the whole metropolitan region, and you think how many people are going through the train stations. Millions of people every day. All of those millions of people were stuck there. And so if you were here, maybe you saw the lines or the people sitting in the streets in front of Shinjuku Station. There's nowhere to go. This city is if we get hit, really? Boy, we're in trouble. So we need to be more resilient. And the things that we saw, I mean, we were okay actually, but it could have been really bad. This is a train station where people were waiting all night. A lot of people walked home, even though it took 8 or 9 hours. But the effect of that disaster came well beyond the region that it originated in. This is also from Tokyo. A lot of people had nowhere to go, so they stayed all night inside. Personally, just the bit that was just sort of relatively shocking to me was that within days, there was no milk, there's no water, there's no bread, cereal was gone, in 7-Eleven, all of them, they're empty. And then it got really weird because orange juice was gone. Okay, fine, orange juice is cool. But then it was Coca-Cola. Who wants Coca-Cola? But there's nothing else to drink, so this Sprite, all the pop drinks were gone. So you go to your grocery store and there's literally nothing to drink except maybe you can get one milk, which is ration. You buy one at a time if you're lucky. This didn't last that long. It was about 5 days, and there was also sort of gas shortages. Long lines for gas. Much like all the stuff you're seeing in New York, it all happened here. Except Tokyo is really, really big, much bigger than New York. So it was worse. But then on the other hand, people in Japan are pretty cool with dealing with things. And the society is very resilient. So I don't know if you noticed in the newspapers, and if you read the New York Times, it says riot in Brooklyn. We didn't have that. There was no riot in Jingu-mai or something. Could you imagine? I mean, it would have been interesting, actually. Probably Christian would be super happy. Yay! People power! Everyone here is so finally... In the end, people are so passive and accepting and willing to sort of bend, which made it better. But at the same time, it was an amazing thing to realize that everything we thought we knew about architecture and planning and all that, yeah, it's not so good when the power goes out and everything else is gone and there's no way to get food in. Infrastructure is hugely important. So, even just to make a final sort of point about this, that even places as far away from a real disaster as Tokyo was in this case, it's caused huge changes. So this was Shibuya right after. I don't know if any of you went. Just a small aside. After Fukushima went crazy, I sent my kids over the mountains, which meant my wife and I could go on a date for the first time in 12 years. So we actually went to Shibuya, and it was darker than this actually. It was really surreal. The city had to change, and it was all voluntary. So there's something that has fundamentally shifted in the psyche of Japan that's really quite fascinating, and you can't see it because it's kind of subtle. If you go to 7-Eleven and the supermarkets, Lawson's, all of the lights, they're not what they used to be. They used to be fluorescent, now they're all LED or something super efficient because they just realized they can't pay for it anymore. People shut off the air conditioners for a really long time. My university forced us to keep our air conditioners off, even though there were places kind of like this without any natural ventilation. Maybe these doors open. But in our place, there was no operable windows because it was designed in the 80s when they thought there'd be lots of energy forever. Even in spite of all that, we had no air conditioning, so it was really hard. And we realized that, architects, passive energy and natural ventilation, yeah, it's a good idea. I think all of that stuff from now on is going to transform how we live and sort of exist in the city. What this means, I guess, is sort of what I'm getting towards is this idea of resiliency. And I think, Tokyo, we were really lucky. I'm not looking forward to the next earthquake. But it's sort of given us a chance to think about resiliency, which is kind of real sustainability if we can do it right, and its ability to bounce back from disaster. The problem is that once we have these disasters and we start recovering from them, we spend a lot of money dealing with short-term things, and they don't deal with any of the long-term things. And those things, those issues, like how are you going to rebuild a community when it's scattered all over the place and so on, are never really resolved. And continuity is lost. So this idea of stillness doesn't really work anymore because continuity is required for the stillness to exist. So the still city is not so still. It's mostly habit. So by the way, it's just another disaster place in New Orleans. And just to give it some context about how you bounce back. Before Katrina, there was almost 500,000 people in New Orleans. Right after that is 93,000. So literally 4/5 of the population, they're gone. And the people who stayed were the ones who didn't have cars or trucks or other ways to get out. Then it came back. A year later, it was doubled. It was 170,000. In 2006, it was up to 200,000, and now it's about 3/4 of what it used to be. But all of those people who left, a lot of them didn't come back. That's still a quarter of the city is just gone. So the question now is, well, should we even rebuild? And it's a really big one. You have all these people who had community, people like Christian described, who knew their neighbors and so on. Of course they want to rebuild. But if they rebuild and 3 people next door to you don't, then you're going to be alone in your house, on a block or whatever. So this is a huge dilemma, and in Tohoku it's probably the biggest one because you don't know what to do. Do you consolidate? And if you do, can you stand living with the people who you used to hate because they were the guys across the other side of the valley and they were those guys? It sounds kind of silly, but it's true. These are the arguments you have. It's hard to bring people together sometimes. And so we need something else. And I can sort of go on about the disasters, but I think what we need now is some kind of vision. So Japan is not about growth anymore. The population is shrinking. It's negative. So what is Japan about? It's not about this sort of infinite growth. And metabolism in the 60s was all about dealing with amazing exponential growth at that time. Now, what vision do we have? We need to come up with something, and we really, really need. And perhaps it's the still city. I'm not sure. Maybe the guidebook will show the way. But we need someone, and hopefully one of you guys here or that one will come up with an idea. This is sort of where we're at now. I think we need to figure out where to go from. So I'm just going to show sort of another sort of tangential idea. This comes from my own studies at the University of Tokyo. And the question is, what kind of tools are available? So I thought I would just sort of very briefly explain an idea that's kind of interesting, maybe. You'll have to tell me. Everybody thinks this is Japan. Everyone knows this Japan. I want to talk about this Japan. The still city is kind of defined by the edges. In the center, Tokyo we're safe, we're fine. This is not the shrinking part of Tokyo. It's not Detroit. But the edges, this is where stuff is kind of very fuzzy and sort of pixelated and fractally and stuff, and it's sort of flying apart. So when I came to Tokyo, I thought I would study about Tokyo, but in the end, I was sent, or I ended up in the suburbs, because that's where things were really going on. And so the thing is, though, that what Japan has to offer in face of all of these sort of challenges is they have an amazingly open and ridiculously, opportunistic zoning system. So I thought I would just show that quite quickly. This is a Japanese house in Toyama, which is not Tokyo. It's on the other side of the mountains towards Korea. It's about 200 square meters or something like that. This is like American-style housing. Everyone has, you can see, 2 cars. Actually 3. These are the 2 main cars, and this is for the kid when they come home, right? So if you've been in Tokyo and you're kind of like, ooh, Tokyo, it's everything I expected. If you just drive a wee bit and you hit this kind of place, it's basically North America. And I mean, literally, it's also a little bit like this. This is what the suburb used to be, not that long ago, and of course it's still hanging around. This and this is all side by side, basically. It's Canada. I mean, it's even got snow. So when I lived here for some time. I had to have a car because there was a trolley, but you know that's for high school kids. Once you finish high school, you take the car. Otherwise, it's not good. And then you know here's the new suburbs on the edge of the city. It's completely you know everywhere else in the world. It's not Tokyo, and it's also this. So. I come from a farming community in Canada, so this is really cute to me. But it's also amazing because it's still family size. You know, Japan has somehow managed to keep family-scale farming, which does not exist where I live. Most of my family were farmers, and now they work for corporations. Still farming, but not for themselves. Just very, very quickly, zoning in Japan, which is really dry and tedious, and I don't want to belabor it too much. Basically, what you can do in Japan is if you can do one kind of thing in one zone, it's sort of a pyramid, you're allowed to do everything underneath it. So basically a factory zoned area can have housing. You can't do the opposite, but that's sort of what it comes down to. There's no regimental, you must have this here and that there and this other thing over there. So even though there's 12 zones, they go across the entire country. It's not like the suburbs versus city center. It's all over the whole place. It means that you can do whatever you want, more or less, with some kind of important caveats, which I won't go into because it would take too long. But let's see if I can get this damn thing to work. This was my research, and I think it'll. So this was an area I looked at. It's a suburb. All these little red things are houses. So in the 70s, there were very little houses, and then it sort of went through this craziness where houses just kept exploding. Shopping malls appeared, and the exponential growth thing going on until you get to something like this. So the area I was looking at, it turned from farming community to completely built-up housing, and now it's a little bit more. It's mostly filled in. So the farmland is gone, and it's all like that. So that looks like sprawl, and it's basically is. But the cool thing is, and that's what I want to show you, is that even though they have this amazing zoning system, and I'm sorry if you hate climbing, I'll be through this shortly. They have all of this stuff, and like blue here, and yellow there, and red over there. They've got it all figured out, except the thing is none of it matters. It really doesn't matter. It's the most amazing thing. Except for the factories, everything is pretty open season. And so even though you have all this stuff, so for example, there's an industrial zone. This one is pretty much just left like that. The commercial zone is supposed to be these 2 little yellow bits. But if you actually go and check, this is all the commercial buildings in the area. So what you end up with is this incredibly diverse sort of landscape that you don't expect to emerge from the zoning system. And I think this is kind of a tool for Japan. It's sort of a way towards resiliency because it's completely open and flexible and can change. Just to give you an idea, this is, there's a commercial zone, and this is sort of residential, but it's a shop, chiropractor, restaurants. They're all basically, as long as it looks like a house, you can do anything inside. That's the rule. So there are performance sort of rules and regulations they have to meet, but it means that you get kind of a lot of opportunity. And that's kind of cool, I think, but what's more interesting is this bit, at least for me. And what I did is I looked at the sort of older area, and I was thinking about Still City, and actually stillness is totally, I'm sorry, where's my Whoa. Did I die? Okay. So basically, what I did was I made a map to see how land use changes. And if I could get this thing to work, what happened was, aha, I broke it. Okay. You just, I won't try to make it work, but it's a super cool animation. You can see basically every 2 years, 2 or 3 buildings change from a doctor's office to a parking lot to a dental clinic to a house and back to a doctor's office. You know, literally constantly. So even though this is the heart of the old suburban center, it is a still city. It's a city that is not growing this little bit, anyways. Its boundaries are set; they're not changing, but it's marked by constant change. Every year, there's 2 or 3 buildings that are changing over a 30-year period. And I think that comes from the opportunities that the zoning system allows. And it means that what's happened basically is because the population is aging, clinics appear. So instead of having to build a massive hospital somewhere, you can just have a doctor, he's a young guy, he's 25, he's got a bit of land, or he inherited it from his father. He can build a clinic and people can come. And so you don't have to have this amazing infrastructure that the government sets in place. You can take advantage of the openness that they've allowed. So I think this is one of the main tools that is kind of sitting there in wait, and I hope we can take advantage of it. This is in addition to the tools that Christian already talked about. Community, I think, is still the most important thing. But on top of that, you have this kind of constant change, which means it's kind of growth, but it's a growth in a different way. It's more growth in quality, perhaps, instead of growth in size. This is sort of what we started with, and it's kind of the lecture we would have given if 311 never happened. It's sort of the ego-filled version where we show some of our projects, but just a little bit. This is basically, well, let me just go on with it actually. Just to describe Tokyo, you've all been here, and you kind of know most of it, so I may be sort of beating a dead horse, as they say. But this is the view of an inner suburb. I live kind of in the back there. This is suburban Tokyo in the inner suburbs. If you go out far enough, it turns out to what I was showing before. But in the inside, it's pretty much the same as the city center, which is crazy. What kind of suburbs go like this? It's sort of shocking. And I always had this idea that the images of Tokyo that you see in movies isn't real. And then I started putting this together and going, oh, yeah, it's real. It's not fake. There is this kind of crazy density and crazy stuff going on. I used to live here. This is just north of Ikebukuro. If you're interested, on the end of the Mita line, there's a massive danshi apartment complex. I lived here for about 5 years. And I know everybody here. Not. There's like 100,000 people. There's some crazy amount of people living within walking distance of my apartment. But this is a block party. And Christian was talking about how community comes from knowing people and sort of being part of a community, and how resilience evolves from that. The Japanese have an amazing ability to congregate and to do this kind of stuff. And although I don't know everybody here, I'm pretty sure my daughter does. Because she goes to school with all the kids, and she knows all the parents and all that stuff. And the cool thing was, my daughters would dance here on that big red stand, and then the grandmothers would come and show them that hip-hop is not the only way you can dance to modern music. This kind of thing is amazing, and I think this is also a sort of essential idea to resiliency. And of course, there's this kind of stuff, and I'm sure you've seen tons of it, so I won't even look at it. This is a view from my window, actually. The weird thing about Tokyo is, even though I live in that crazy, dense little thing in the inner suburbs of Tokyo, I live just around Setugai, in Setugai, rather. Just about 10 minutes from Shibuya. There's farmland in the middle of all that stuff. So Chris was talking about allotment. It's the weirdest, seriously, the strangest damnest thing. That this is just sitting behind my window, but if you walk 3 blocks towards the station, they have one of these sort of pay, $300 a month to plant a tomato sort of place as well. So this is just sitting here, and everyone walks by, but they don't feel like they can take part in it. there should be money made from this too, because if you can take advantage of a roof, you might as well take advantage of the damn land. But it never happens. I'm not sure why this is here. I think it's a tax break, to be honest. But it's amazing that you can have farmland and it's just in the middle of all of it. And just to sort of also give you a scale check, this is a train I take. It's a wee little trolley. It goes just a bit faster than I can walk. And it runs, from it actually goes a really long way. And if you get on at one end and go to the other end, you'll probably cry because it's oh my God, I'm still on the train. And I haven't gone anywhere because the rest of Tokyo is so interconnected. This one is also connected, but it's sort of left over from 1920s or something when people must have lived a slower life. But it's charming. This is also still there. So it's not all high speed, it's not all Shinkansen, it's not all this, all this craziness. There's also slowness and there's also bits of greens and things like that in the middle of the city. So, okay, this is sort of where I get sort of egotistic and I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about, well, okay, as an architect, when we're here, we came here a while ago, we started an office about 5 years ago, and then the economy went to hell, and then we kind of had to do this sort of psychoanalysis and figure out what the hell we're doing. So I'm going to show that, I'm going to talk about that just quickly, because it kind of has something to do with the still city. And this is what I would talk about if I didn't know that the world was better than, more complex than it really is. So it's a bit superficial, but
where is it?
does this even exist anymore? Is it gone? Is it still there? Oh, okay. If you haven't been there, then yeah, I haven't seen it. I've seen one that looks like it, but I don't think this one. This is Kengokuma, right? So Kengokuma, he went to school in the United States and he came back and he's faced with Tokyo, and I think he also saw this and he said, what the hell am I going to do here? And he said, what? So he did this. He had no clue. Clearly, he had no clue because he starts with these classical architecture that exploded to 12 to 13 stories. And then it took him a while. So this is 1991, by the way. So exactly about 20 years ago. It's interesting. But this is what he does now. So he figured, the symbolism has changed a little bit, but he's got much more subtle, I think is the word. So, okay, we come here, and we've been here 5 years, and we're 4 years, and we don't know anything. So we're kind of thinking, well, what the hell are we going to do? And then we realized that Kengokuma didn't know either, so it's okay. So now we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. This is from Monty Python. You're all probably old enough to recognize it. This is The Life of Brian. I hope you know it. If you haven't seen it, you should, because they've got great actors. The thing is, you're stuck in Tokyo, and you can't stand out because it's just this craziness. I mean, Kengokuma made a bloody, this column in the middle of the city, and everyone goes, oh, yes, it's a column, yeah, very well done. No one cares. So you can't all be this, sort of stand out, ooh, I'm God, look at me. No one gives a, that bad word. No one gives a shit, basically. So we're thinking, okay, we're not going to do that. Well, what do we do? Because you still have to be interesting. And so we kind of looked a little bit, well, what did everyone else do? This is Kazuyo Shinohara, who's a great architect. And we realized that, in the 80s, it was kind of a different world. Tokyo was a place that people were a bit scared of, I would say. So, faced with Tokyo, everyone looked inside and they escaped, and they made these beautiful, poetic interior spaces. And there was this period, this is not the same building, but also by Shinohara. It's a building with very few windows, and the life is on the inside. So, sort of after this sort of first sort of growth spurt, Tokyo became about getting away from Tokyo, but still being inside. This is by Toyo Ito. I don't know if you know the story. It's designed for his sister, whose husband died, and so it was a house of grief. But I read an article where the daughter says that it was like growing up in a coffin. And it really is. I mean, I'm not sure about the psychological sort of appropriateness of this design. It has a really amazing story. But it's got an interior courtyard with no windows on it. So he made an escape, and then he said, but don't go there. So even though you're escaping from the city, you're not even allowed to do that. So it's kind of an amazing period in Japan, where the city was seen as this kind of place to get away from. This is Osaka, it's not Tokyo. This is, of course, Ando, the building that made him famous. It's the one where you have to have an umbrella to go to the toilet because you have to go outside, inside your courtyard. Brilliant building, really great. But it's not what we wanted to do because we didn't feel the way Ando and Ito and everyone else did. There was this huge movement going on, and so we came after all that. And I think the way to describe it is kind of, it's my world, not yours. This is what they were thinking. You're inside Tokyo, you're inside Osaka, you're in this big city, and I want my world, and I don't want you guys in it. So I'm just going to take the sky, and you can have the rest of the city. That's kind of the attitude that was there. And then we came, and we're kind of arrogant architects from Poland, and of course Germany, and Canada. Canadians are probably the most arrogant, just in case you don't know. But what we thought, well, okay, we're here, so let's make it our world and as big as possible. And I think this is kind of where we are now, amongst ourselves, but I think also this kind of building is that kind of idea. There's basically no walls, it's all glass. You want to be right here. If you go to the toilet, you can see the guy next door, also going to the toilet in his own place. There's something about sort of this acceptance of the city. And this idea came to us, not from this kind of building, but from our first client, actually, which is, I'll just show you real quickly. This is kind of unrelated, but I thought I'd throw it in. We kind of, in a process of psychoanalyzing ourselves, we took the Farnsworth house. This is a plan of the Farnsworth house, and the yellow bit is our land. So, if you look at the Farnsworth house, it looks really comfy, right? It's bloody huge. It's really massive because, we're putting a whole family on a bit that's basically just the front steps. So this is the Farnsworth house put on our site. That is a typical Japanese scale. So if you think Farnsworth house looks comfy, it must be because those chairs are huge, or Japan is just not comfortable, possibly. So we built this place, and we didn't have enough money to make it all glass, but our idea was that, well, how open can we make a city? And the reason we were able to do even this sort of first step, and most of our clients are totally not into that, maybe half of them. But this couple, speaking of sort of subversiveness, these guys were demonstrating in the 60s. We have amazing stories about when they're in the Communist Party and fighting the man and all this. And somehow they have a lot of money. And so they bought this amazing place, and he used to be a jazz drummer, and she grew up in the middle of the city, and she said, when we lived in the city growing up, it was totally open. You would see your neighbors, and you'd go in and out, and on the street and the house, it was all kind of one thing. But then all these farmers moved into Tokyo, and they were scared shitless. I'm sorry if I've heard a few curses, so I hope that's safe. They were just scared of the city, and so you end up with places like Tokyo and Soyorito and all these sort of inward-looking places where you just escape the city as much as you can. But these guys, they said, no, we don't want to do that. We're happy if our neighbors see us. And in fact, we like it, and apparently they actually do. And it was an opportunity for us and an eye-opener because we didn't really think about that before, that you could do that. And so it's pink. The only thing the neighbor said when it went up was, "That's a pink house," and basically that was it. So nobody cared that it was pink, except just to note that it was. So this kind of individuality, and you can't shock anybody here anymore. It's just not possible. No one complained. And the thing is that anyways we tried to do was to try to make it so the city to just go out and turn into this green hill, and it turns into a deck, and then it turns into your house. It's as open as possible. And the cool thing was that the neighbors did more like the Ando to Dow thing, and I think I have one picture that shows it. That big blank wall, that's the neighbors, and it was under construction the same time as our building, so we snuck in, and there's no windows. So, and it's not even like Ando with interior courtyard, it's just 3 floors with no windows, except at the end. So you're inside your house and it's just like, oh look, lights over there. It's amazing. They've shut themselves down from all the opportunity that the city offers. So sure, you can see the neighbors, walking in, they're going into the doors and stuff. But you get this huge, expansive space. So when you actually visit this place, and if you get the chance, I definitely recommend it. It feels huge. It's 80 square meters, but it feels like 100 or maybe 102. It really feels big, and you don't feel crowded or uncomfortable. So even though it's not the Farnsworth house, which is, I don't know how many square meters it is, but it's got to be a lot. Because this is basically the front porch, if you remember, those 2 sets of steps leading up to the Farnsworth house. That's the size this is. So just to give you a sense of scale. And these are my kids a few years ago. It's a fantastic green space. It's full of strawberries and it's full of all kinds of stuff that she's planted. It's gone completely wild and it's fantastic. And the people next door don't even get to look at it because they built a bloody concrete box wall beside it. So even though we made this great place for everybody and the owners are happy to share it, no one gets to take advantage of it. So we have this kind of idea. Tokyo is kind of like a plantation. It's benign and it's sort of undifferentiated. And if that is the city, then we should open up to it as much as possible, just the same as you would open up to a plantation. So that's sort of what we kind of came to realize. And I'll show you just one more project quickly. This is a tower we're working on. We'll see if we get to build it. This is Farnsworth Tower on the site that we're looking at. The only way it fits is if you put it vertically. And it's just about the size of the tower, which is amazing. If you cut it up, it fits in more like that. This is sort of the same idea. If you could make, well, it basically came from a client, not the client for this building, but for another project, who said, well, I love Tokyo and I love living here, but every balcony I see on the apartments that I want to rent is filled with air conditioners and I can't sit down on it. So we came up with a plan where you could have 100 square meters of living space and 100 square meters above it of outdoor space. And the only reason we could do that was because basically this site is just a freakish site in the middle of Tokyo where the floor area ratio allowed you to build only 8 floors, but the building height was 45 meters, which meant you could actually build 13 or 14 stories. So we said, well, okay, let's just spread it out and take advantage of it. So inside Tokyo, there are places like this all over the place that need to be explored. And that's kind of where we've kind of come to. And this happens to be close to Tokyo Tower. So it's a fantastic area, and you get this kind of thing. So you can have a barbecue or whatever, live a Western lifestyle if you want, or not. It's kind of like this. So this is what we come to realize. And then, just as we sort of came, just a few more slides. Just as we sort of came to realize that we could do this, 3/11 happened, and we started to think, well, okay, great, but what happens when the power goes off? And now we're wondering, well, how are we going to integrate this kind of realization that the city can be open with an idea that you need more than just having open walls and access to the city at large. So how do we bring community into this kind of space? How do you make this resilient, not just with energy and so on, but all of the social things that you need. And so, last sort of question, I guess, is, if I can just say one more time, is can we make a resilient city? And is Tokyo still resilient, if it ever was? Basically, unless Kuhn has anything to add, no, you're cool. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much. The bald guys, he's in the back. I'm the only one in the office up there.
Is there any questions for William?
See your work and listen to your talk. And where you used to live and then one where you live now,
Yeah.
and your professional work,
Yeah.
and your stuff way up north and near Goodman and whatever.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you've done anything like around your neighbourhood. Like it doesn't have to be professional, so you know.
Around our own neighborhood?
Yeah, where we live now, or where you lived before. Like maybe you, I don't know, made some stuff
Yeah.
with your kids or.
Oh, sorry to ignore this. It's the wrong ending. The Takashima Daira did, yeah, because the community was super tight.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's sort of this housing that isn't supposed to worked brilliantly. At least in Canada, when we went to school, we were told Corbusier is the demon. And he's the one you should never ever replicate because he made the world bad. And then they'd show like New York City with slums or Philadelphia or whatever. But our place was amazing. I know well, I still know. We still visit them actually. We know everyone in the building. And we know everyone in the building across the way from us because we look at them across, we're that close. And you'd actually talk. I was like, hey, it's like living in Italy, maybe. Because you'd sit on the fourth floor and you talk to the person on the third floor across this sort of gap that's about the size of this room. Which is kind of weird, but very communal. So in that case, yeah, I did. But where I am now, not so much, except my wife is. And that's because she's really involved in school. And so if some of you probably have kids, and if you don't have kids, and if you don't know, kids bring communities together like nothing, nobody's business. All of a sudden, you know everybody. If you're looking for work, maybe it works that way, not so far grasped.
So do you have like an example of even something like this living?
Right now, well, mostly it's just like organizing events for the school. In the school my kids go to now is massive. It's got way too many kids, but it means that they need lots of volunteers to organize events. So she does that kind of stuff. Mostly, I make tons of posters and booths and things like that for festivals.
That's interesting because around where we live, there's tons of schools, but there's 6 elementary schools within walking distance.
Yeah.
And each of them have one class of first graders and 30 kids. 30 kids.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Setagaya has a population, it's a bit different from a lot of Tokyo, which has no kids at all. Like we're the one with the big danshi, the population is shrinking. So the school, it's like that, it's 30 kids in the house.
Well, as you guys were in your old, on your way, I was curious how you picture the future of the city.
The future of the city?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know yet. I wish I could be like all these great architects in America who have like growing green things, sticking out on the coasts. I kind of actually imagine Tokyo at least will be like it is now, except maybe more comfortable. Quite honestly. And there will be a few really great buildings and projects, but they'll be like the Roppongi Hills, they're just like little splashes. They don't change the whole city.
What do you find uncomfortable now?
Actually, right now I'm pretty good, but commuting is a big part of it. Where I am right now, I think we need more green space. I think hopefully that will emerge more. Where I lived before was a bit north, and so there was a lot of green space. They had amazing urban planners in the 60s, and I have to say, brilliant. Not so much in Setagaya, although they've had lots of Machizukuri stuff going on. Community is great, but there's nowhere for my kids to go, so I think they're going to forget how to ride a bike, and there's no rollerblading, because you're going to get hit by a car as soon as you walk out the front door. That's not so nice. So I'm still looking. There must be a secret part I have to find when I go over.
That's interesting, also, because I grew up in Setagaya.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, everyone was biking, everyone was in parks.
How they were.
And then now I go back to the same area, all the parks have been built on.
Oh, they have?
Yeah.
Aha.
So that's one of the issues.
Yeah, I think, it'd be nice if a little bit of this population shrinkage would happen just around my place. But it doesn't seem to be
showing
going
this
this way.
graph that in 100 years,
Yeah.
it will be back to 1880.
And they're all going to be
Do you
here.
know what was the population in 1880?
Yeah, it was 35 million or something, right?
The population of Japan was 35 million.
I think it was 30. Yeah, I think it was 35 million around 1880.
There was this graph.
My daughter painted this a few years ago. I still like it. This one, right? Yeah, so what's it say? 37 million in 1880. Basically Tokyo today.
For all
But
Japan.
that makes a difference, isn't it?
Yeah, but I really think, I think Kun was about to say that if the population collapses, it's not going to be here. In Osaka might empty out, but unless something really crazy.
37 million people left in Japan.
Oh,
Yeah, that's much.
that's
There was such a strong, how to say, force, gravity within the city. Compare 1950 Osaka to Tokyo 1950, that was headquarters, national headquarters. In the past 40 years, they've all Osaka.
But you also have the opposite flow, right? Maybe really marginal, but people who can't pay who can't afford the city anymore, so they go back. Maybe it's artists and
A
more
little bit, yeah.
conscious.
A little bit.
One comment also to the population in Japan. I just spoke to a Japanese friend today, and he also said that it's one of the biggest problems, in his opinion, that the cities, like all the population is focused in Tokyo. As he said, like in 50 years ago, it was more equal, like
Yeah, I think that's right.
Hiroshima, Osaka, Tokyo. But now it's more and more accumulating in Tokyo, and also I think maybe all the other regions will see more and more a decrease in population, but Tokyo will be more or less the same, maybe the inner part. And to this graph, I'm not sure. I mean, now we're starting to have a lot of international flows of migration and populations. So also there will be maybe influence on Japan if they want to keep up as a economic important country. Maybe they will allow more flux of people coming to Japan.
Yeah, I don't know what they'll do, but that would be amazing if they do. Yeah.
Maybe the last question, because we're close to
Yeah.
closing.
Now, Bill, you said a couple of times that you thought that maybe before the earthquake, Tokyo could be classified as a sort of whatever they call it, still city, but now it's different. As if the earthquake has what restarted the historical clock, or
Feels like
what do you mean by that exactly? What's actually changing? That's meaning that the city or the country is no longer in this kind of static condition and it's moving into something different.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hugely biased by my job at Keio because the whole university has switched to Tohoku 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I admit maybe it's not real, but it feels to me like we're suddenly talking about the future, and we weren't. I think that's huge and new.
The future is back.
Feels like it, yeah. Not since 1960, right? Maybe 1970 when the last metabolism movement sort of was accepted.
I think since the bubble exploded, early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a very kind of like, it's a very different kind of future from future or images of the 80s or the 60s.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like what Victor was showing us, it's very small scale and community oriented, and none of this kind of architecture
Yeah,
rational
true.
planning.
Yeah, well, that's what I said. I think it's still missing, but maybe that gets to your point that the small scale and comfort seems to be more the issue now. So it seems to be giving.
It's a split in terms of features. It's kind of you have a social feature as opposed to
Yeah.
feature.
Yeah, it could be. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. I'm just hoping for no earthquakes. Because that really freaked me out. I don't know if you guys are here. Oh. No more of those, please.
Thank you.
So maybe before we take off and leave, there's like, I don't know, is Joris still here? Joris, maybe you can say a little bit about kind of